Joining me now for more is Congressman Louie Gohmert, a member of the House Judiciary Committee, and actually a former judge as well. Louie, good to see you. So here's my concern. The Department of Justice puts out this picture, right? It seems like they want to litigate their case in the press in regard to Donald Trump. You and I both know that if there is a document that has a marking that says it's classified, doesn't mean that it's classified if someone has declassified it like the president, or if a document doesn't have a classification marking on it, doesn't mean it's not classified. We saw that with Hillary Clinton's server. What do you think about what the DOJ is doing here with this picture and their argument on classifications?
Well, you make great points. You always did, and I do miss our conversations in the cloakroom, Sean. But look, there has never in history been a time when a president with authority to declassify documents did so, and the DOJ and the intel community, unelected bureaucrats, refused to acknowledge and accept the declassification. And further, you refer to my days as a judge. I mean, I was a felony judge. I signed a lot of warrants. I turned some down because they didn't do what the Fourth Amendment required. You have to describe in the affidavit and in the application with particularity specifically what areas to be searched and what is to be seized. They didn't bother to identify specific documents because they were on a witch hunt. They were out to try to hurt the Republican Party in this midterm. This has never been done. And if they had had a fair-minded judge, he would have said, well, what specifically are you searching for? Well, we're looking for anything that might be classified. Well, how do you know he has them? What specifically? None of that happened. And the Constitution requires it because if the judge doesn't do his job, then you can have unelected bureaucrats at the DOJ and Intel, as we've seen, who want to hurt a president, a former president, and so they misrepresent things. We know that's been done by the DOJ and Intel, and the judge didn't do his job.
You know, Louie, I was a prosecutor, so I didn't sign off on warrants, but I presented warrants to judges. And if I actually had been harassing a potential defendant, like the Department of Justice has been harassing Donald Trump through the Russia collusion hoax, the warrants that had gone to the FISA court, the leaks to the press, any judge would have been on heightened scrutiny of any warrant I brought to them because of my past behavior with regard to this defendant. But it seems like this judge didn't seem to take any of the past behavior of the FBI and the DOJ into account when it signed this broad warrant on President Trump.
Sean, you must have been a great prosecutor because you did what you were supposed to do, seek justice and not go after people with vendettas. That judge should have been, and he didn't look with heightened scrutiny, as you said, and especially when there has been lies and on top of lies going after Trump to get the initial warrants when he first took office. So that judge didn't do his job. And as far as you mentioned about Garland, DOJ saying, look, we're trying to protect these documents. Well, the truth is they didn't disclose documents that Trump sure could have used in the two impeachments. They didn't help at all. The intel community and DOJ were after Trump. And so that should have brought the judge to even more heightened scrutiny. And I would submit, Sean, those documents we have a better chance of none of them being destroyed in Trump's hands than we do in the DOJ intelligence hands.
But Louie,
and that's a sad compliment.
But Louie, in regard to the Department of Justice's position in regard to the special master, they're saying, well, listen, we don't need a special master because all these documents belong to the federal government. I think they're missing the point. Donald Trump is saying, we want a special master because you took actually my documents that are privileged, my attorney-client privileged documents, my executive privileged documents. You took those documents, and I want a special master to look at all the documents you took to make sure I get my documents back, the documents that you aren't entitled to.
Yeah, and it brings back to mind the case of William Jefferson, who was guilty of sin, a member of Congress,
Yep.
And Mueller, as head of the FBI, got a warrant and searched his office. And the circuit court struck it down and said, you can't. And in that case, they did the same thing. They said, we'll have prosecutors that will review these that won't participate in prosecution. And the court says, that's not good enough. And here they're doing it again because the court didn't punish them back then. And they're going to have to take punitive action against the DOJ, or they're going to keep abusing the system.
Yeah, unless they're punished for the bad behavior, they're going to keep doing it. I want to go to this, though. It's no surprise the Department of Justice is cracking down on whistleblowers, too. The Attorney General writes in a memo, quote, "No department employee may communicate with senators, representatives, congressional committees, or congressional staff without advance coordination, consultation, or approval by OLA," which is the Office of Legislative Affairs. So, Louie, you have the Department of Justice saying, no, don't talk to the members of Congress who do oversight on our Department of Justice and FBI. But what you can do in leadership at the FBI and DOJ is you can actually leak to the press stories that are fake and false, but don't talk to the Louie Gohmerts of the world. That's wrong. What do you make of the story or the memo?
Well, you remember how frustrating it was as a member of Congress, but Sean, I've not disclosed this at all before, but just in recent weeks, I've had a number of FBI whistleblowers give me information about corruption within the FBI and the DOJ. And that's why there is a separation of powers. They should not be able to tell people, you can't use your constitutional right to talk to your member of Congress. We can't have proper oversight if we can't have them talk to us and report abuses. That's why there's whistleblower statutes. But the DOJ, they say it's to protect them. Well, yes, it is. It's to protect the corruption within the DOJ. Right. We've got to have them be able to report to us what's going on.
That's right. They don't want to see the corruption, seep out into members of Congress through good members of the FBI and DOJ who will report it. But I mean, I never really knew any of the members of the Department of Justice and the FBI. But you look at today with all the politics and scandals at the FBI, whether it's, Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe, Jim Baker, Bruce Orr, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Kevin Kleinsmith, and now Timothy Thibault. I mean, you have members of the FBI and DOJ who Americans know those names really well because they've been partisans inside of law enforcement, where law enforcement is supposed to be blind. Justice is supposed to apply to all of us equally. But now with these guys in leadership, they want to apply it against Republicans to the benefit of Democrats.
That's right. And to protect themselves for the corruption that's in the DOJ. And don't forget the intel. They are right in there together in wanting to stop Donald Trump. They work together to try to get the warrants that spied on his campaign and on him after he was president. So we have got to get to the bottom of that corruption. And it's going to take some fair-minded judges willing to do their job and punish the DOJ. But yeah, they rushed to get through the documents so they could say, oh, we don't need a special master. We've been through all of those. Well, then that means a court is going to have to slap down some of the DOJ or they're never going to get the point.
Congressman, I won't have faith in the Department of Justice and the FBI until people start getting fired. Politics has no place in law enforcement. And until people are fired who've been political, I don't believe that change has been made. Louie Gohmert, always a great member of Congress. You were a great judge, and thank you for joining me today.